Welcome back, everybody, to our second episode for our this year's season's Lifting Nerds podcast. Today, we have a very important person, also a very big part of the evidence-based lifting community, which had a fantastic season last year in his natural bodybuilding road. We have the amazing Leo King with us. So welcome to the show, man. It's an honor for you to actually be part of the show and having you coming on and talk about a lot of very interesting topics. And it seems to be a very big year this year for everybody in the natural bodybuilding community as well. So we're very excited to have you spill your 2 cents on a lot of our questions today. Welcome.
Awesome. Well,
Welcome.
the honor is all mine. I appreciate you guys inviting me on your podcast. I'm looking forward to speaking to you guys today about all the topics, I think.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start off with a the very easy questions first. As all the fans out there has followed you, you have been competing last year for your last season. How did that go?
I think it went really well, honestly. So this was my, I think, shows 12 to 14. So I started competing back in 2011. So I've been doing this over a decade now, and this was it's probably my sixth or seventh season in reality. But I was, all in all, I think it went really well. I ended up competing in three shows. One in the Washington State Naturals, just outside of Portland, Oregon. And then had the honor of going over to Switzerland to compete in the Swiss Pro Championships. Um, and then finishing off with the World Championships in Boston, which for the listeners out there, it was just an incredible year for natural bodybuilding. It seemed to be the year where everyone came out to play, and honestly, it was just an amazing experience just to grace the stage with so many amazing athletes.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's because I think from all the worlds that I've seen, that's probably one of the most competitive worlds probably that there has ever been. Would you agree with that?
For sure. So I'd say, some like most seasons, certain classes are stacked. But this like 2024 season, it was like all classes, all divisions, amateurs and pros. It was insanely competitive, right? So I think there was almost 60 pro bodybuilders, which is probably the biggest of the classes. So they had four divisions, effectively four classes of 15. Um, and for there to be that amount of just incredible athletes on stage, you just know how high the competition and the standard was. But not just the bodybuilding classes, whether the physique and the fit body, the bikini, the figure, like everyone was. It was stacked from top to bottom. So yeah, just really awesome experience. The energy, the audience, I mean, the judges had the work cut out for them. So kudos to them. And and honestly, it's just an incredible week experience.
That's
The show was
awesome. That's
really
awesome.
it was really we had like I mean we had Barbica come back to compete, and that was insane. There was you're absolutely right about that. There was a really stacked class for every single division.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was lucky. I got to compete against him on the same stage in Switzerland as well, which took everyone by surprise. No one knew he was showing up to that event, and you just walk in backstage and you're like, this is awesome, but it's scary at the same time, right? So
Like, damn
I
you,
had some
why are you
fun.
here?
How much does he weigh on stage? Like he just looks so dense.
Uh,
Like that guy is
he's
just
a middleweight, so I think realistically he's probably only 175 pounds,
okay.
but he's probably about 5'4".
Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean his mass on that frame is just
Yeah.
stacked.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Sweet. In terms of this last prep for you, what was there anything specifically that you changed from your prep? I believe it was back in 2021 compared to last year's prep. Was there any specific different approach that you took, or was it relatively similar?
I'd say it was similar for the most part. We take the long approach, so my prep started probably almost a year in advance. We've heard it coined before, a bit of the pre-prep. So I did a bit of a pre-prep, sort of, months 14 to 12 out from the show, and then kind of just to tighten up and see how everything was looking. And then I took the next sort of 4 to 6 months where I was just slowly building up food again. So that took us around to about April. And I started prep quite early. Realistically, I only had about 15 pounds to lose, maybe 17. Um, but yeah, so we started in, let's say, May, and just again, nice gradual approach. Started moving steps up, started bringing food down a little bit. Just a very easy, calculated approach. But one thing that I was actually around July time, I got really lean really fast, just almost out of nowhere. So we actually then took almost 2 months of building food up. We were eating at that time like 3,000 to 3,500 calories a day for um the 7 days of the week, right? And cardio was zero. I didn't do anything other than steps, and so that kind of put us in a really good healthy spot. And then literally like 2 weeks before the first show, that's actually when we actually started dropping calories again. It was it was almost like unnecessarily long, I would say at this point, maybe potentially, but it all worked out, right? I felt great. I think I looked okay, and then we just, yeah, from the rest of the shows, we just kind of used the information given on the first show, mostly with regards to the peaking process. Um, I knew that there was a potential for there to be a bantamweight class, which would be 150 pounds or less. So I did dig a little bit harder for Worlds, because I had 5 weeks between shows 2 and 3. So I did dig a little bit more just to get down to that sort of 147, 148 mark. I weighed in at 148 on the day, and yeah, so I did sneak into the bantamweight class, which was kind of my goal because, as with any athlete, I think you prefer to be in the top end of a weight class as opposed to the bottom end of an even more stacked weight class. And but yeah, just taking information from the previous shows with regards to food intake on a peak week, making sure we're hydrated, sodium, and all those things, and then just adjusting on a per show basis.
Okay, nice.
Would you say that would your preps get easier every single time that you compete?
Yeah, I would say yes, in a way, and I think that comes from experience as well, for sure. Knowing when to push and why to push and stuff like that. And as you said kind of earlier, they have many hats, right? Like lots of positions in this industry, and so you are also trying to balance out those things as well. So I think it's not letting the less stressful things stress you out in a way, right? Try and take a bigger sort of holistic view of the whole thing. And I always just remind myself that, heck, we all do this for fun, right? Yeah, so
Yeah.
I want it to be a good experience, not just for me, but obviously the people around me as well. So I always kind of come back to that sort of philosophy of just, hey, we're having fun with this. We're trying to challenge ourselves, obviously, but I don't want it to affect anything else that we have going on.
I think that's also a very good point that you make. You make that statement because we actually talked about this on the first episode where we're talking about Brandon's your prep and then having that mindset in behind competing. A lot of people go head into competition for the for the wrong reasons. Where winning is your first priority versus having to enjoy the actual process of it. I think we talked about a little bit this last time. So if you guys haven't heard, just refer back to our first episode. We're not going to dig too deep on that. However, I think you also make a really good point is having different positions, and the good segue into this next topic is you having many hats. You're a father, you are an athlete, you're a president of the WM Canada. What other hats do you have? A husband, of course.
Yeah, so I
What else?
run a coaching company as well. King's Fitness is also a
Oh yeah,
brick and
gym
mortar gym
owner. Yeah, coaching company. Yeah, you
owner.
have many, many hats on, and you have, the stress management. It's I would say it's unbelievable. Um, so I'm glad you actually talk about, how you actually manage stress and make it fun for the people around you. It's easier said than done. But what is some of the things or some of the tactics that you might use if you feel like you're kind of like trailing off?
Yeah, I think in general it's just how you're setting things up, right? So you're always going to make things a priority. So again, if you're in the competition season, that's going to be the priority, right? But ideally, maybe you've you planned out all your meetings with regards to business, or you've front loaded a bunch of your client programs and things like that. So you're kind of getting ahead of the game on those other things. And then when the time matters and you need to travel to compete, or it is peak week and you just need to just focus on yourself for that week more so. You're at least taking care of that. Everything's kind of this dial approach, right? So you can kind of dial some things back and other things forward, right? So yeah, and it's making sure all those things are taken care of, right? Whether it's family as a dad or a husband, like you said there, and then on the business side of things as well. So I think it's just making sure you are prioritizing some things, but it's not like you're cutting everything out of the whole picture, right? And then when in reverse, like on the other side of things, you're trying to then dial those other things back up to bring them back up to speed, etc. Right? So
Gotcha.
yeah.
With your schedule, like, do you find you schedule everything out to like the hour of the day, or like what does that look like from like a scheduling, or like how do you go
Mhm.
about organizing your day? Would you say, like, I know you
Yeah, I
mentioned
have
like,
a
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a weekly planner, and it is actually done by the hour. But I'm not that anal, so to speak, where it's like, yes, it's this and this and this. But you do obviously are blocking time slots for certain things. So in particular, training becomes that priority where you just need to get it done, right? So I do block those in between some of my other things that I have going on. Yeah, so focusing on those big bricks first, blocking them in, and then understanding that other things have flexibility, right? So heck, as long as I get my 10,000 steps in the day or whatever that number is, it's like, okay, I could front load it in the morning, go for a morning walk. The dog always needs walking, right? So it doesn't matter when it goes out, but as long as it gets taken out, who knows? Maybe it's in between a couple of clients in the afternoon or just in the evening when the kids go to bed, right? So I always also did find that to a point, the closer you do get to competition, the routine does become more and more similar and more predictable. So we all talk about, we love flexible dieting, we love the whole flexibility about life, and that's definitely got so many merits and so many values that people can learn from. But I do find that the more and more routine and predictable you can make things, again, talk about stress management before, it you just become less stressed, right? Because you're not thinking about things as much. Your meal plan generally becomes a bit more like a meal plan for the most part, right? Like, there's some nuances day to day and you're filling things in here and there. But for the most part, my breakfast, my lunch, my dinners, and my snacks are, 90% the same. And then it's just adjusting as sort of needed, right? So I think that's kind of key. A key approach is knowing when to push things and when not to, and when to make things more routine and when not to, right?
Makes sense. Yeah. Is there any times where you find like during prep, like I know for me personally, sometimes in those digging phases, like everything can just be overwhelming. And I find for me personally, I like to do a little bit of meditation or do like journaling or something to kind of just get away from that for a second. Do you personally have a approach like that you utilize when you feel like you're starting to get overwhelmed, or do you find yourself even really getting to that point?
You do always get overwhelmed. I think, yeah, taking a break from whatever you're doing is going to be key, whether it's going and meditating, reading, going for a walk, or just, going into a quiet room and just breathing for a few minutes, right? Like, I think yeah, you have to know what brings you back and what grounds you again. I do like we were talking about just the journaling and stuff like that. And again, as long as things are structured in a way, it generally does help to keep things from being overwhelmed and stuff like that. But life happens, right? Shit always goes wrong, and things happen, and you just need to deal with it. Especially as a business owner in a gym, something breaks down. It's like, hey, that's got to take your you know immediate focus, depending on no matter what you have going on. So
Makes sense. Makes sense.
yeah.
Um, in terms of, I just want to circle back to your last prep as well. I know you mentioned that you think maybe the prep was just slightly too long, as you guys had to bring the calories up a bit more. Do you
Mhm.
think your next prep you do, like, if, I'm assuming you'll probably be competing again in next like 5 years or something, but we can talk about that too. Do you think you'll shorten the prep just a little bit more so you don't run into that issue again? Or?
Yeah, I think so. Assuming I'm in that sort of same sort of position with regards to like a level of body fat position and stuff like that, and being healthy, I think I would shorten it by a little bit. I do like the approach. So I work with Dr. Joe Kamczewski, who I'm sure many of your audience will be at least familiar with the name. But we generally like to build up food into shows for sure. Um, but I think it was like, we were so far out that we had to do it for so long that you just start losing some of that crispness, right? That fullness becomes almost a little bit too big. So that's why we had to then drop calories back down and kind of peak again. I think 2021 we did it perfectly, where sort of the last 6 weeks we were basically linear loading every single week into the competition, and it was like you perfectly timed that peaking process to the point where that final week you could have stepped on stage any moment of any second of the day, sort of thing, right? Carbs were nice and high. You're always hydrated and stuff like that, right? So I think next time probably would shorten it a little bit. Um, for the most part, yeah, I think it would just be a little bit more beneficial, maybe. And again, maybe it's just a little less mentally draining, right? Because a lot of preppers at prep, you're still going to be,
Yeah.
draining the engine, so to speak, there. So, um, yeah, and then we always do a kind of a linear load. We'll probably talk about peak weeks, but we always do a linear load throughout the peak week itself as well. Yeah,
Gotcha.
so yeah.
So you would start a little bit on the low end and just slowly ramp it up with carbs, I'm assuming, towards the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, usually adding, 25 to 50 grams a day for the most part of carbs, mostly, and some fats as well. That's something we did probably a little bit different this time, is fats were kept a lot higher this prep. And I really noticed it made a difference with just digestion, and just overall hunger signals were generally a lot better. Cravings were much down. So that was actually a nice change that we kind of did make. And it was the difference of probably 10 to 15 grams of fats on the daily. But, when fats can get quite low, it makes a difference.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. Did you notice that you got a little bit more fullness too with like having a bit more fat? Because I know, like, I think there's certain triglycerides that get stored in your muscle belly as well, and like sometimes that can maybe influence fullness. Did you notice when you had the fat a bit higher that you generally had a bit more total fullness than just ramping up carbs?
Yeah, I think on both sides of it, but one, hunger, because it slows the digestion down, but it also just slows the process of maybe it's just an insulin response as well, right? You're not generally getting as much of that sort of fast acting response when fats are lower. So I think in the fullness of the muscle bellies as well can help. I'm not sure the absolute physiological process behind that, but I'm sure there's many guys that can kind of talk about it. But generally, that's why we use fats in peak week as well, and fats will be increasing along with the carbohydrates, and it's for those kind of two reasons. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. With water, I noticed you mentioned you kept water high. Like, do you typically drink a little bit more water during peak week than like other weeks, or what does that typically look like for you?
Probably a little bit more. Yeah, yeah. I think if you add a liter or so to baseline is probably pretty good there. Um, yeah, so I think peak week we were probably around 5 to 6 liters a day, and then normally I was probably around 4 liters or so. And then that even went into the show morning as well. I think on Worlds the morning, we actually did a full workout, full upper body workout the morning of um, the Worlds, which was fun. And uh, down to 2 liters of water with some electrolytes and stuff on wake up before the workout. And our goal was just to get really full really early. So I have a very like fast metabolism, a little bit more on the ectomorphic side of things. So we were just trying to not get behind on that side of things. And um, yeah, I think that one we did. We were a little bit more aggressive for Worlds this year, bigger stage, bigger competition, so to speak, right? So
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. With that, because I think Worlds it was a little bit behind this year too in terms of scheduling. Excuse me. Did you find with that, like you guys probably, do you find that adds stress to the peaking at all when you notice the show is behind? Or I guess you've probably done it so many times that you guys probably just have a game plan
yeah,
for
you
it.
just have to manage your food. If it was only about an hour probably behind
Oh, okay.
for when I got on stage. I think as the show went on, because of the competitiveness, they probably were a little delayed. But in reality, so my eye-opening experience with that was generally bodybuilders compete in the morning. Okay, so that's our Worlds we were on at 11 o'clock. I think in Washington I was on at 9 or 10 o'clock. And that's fairly normal. So generally you can have one, maybe two meals in advance, but generally you're still quite tight from the morning and in general, right? As the body's still warming up. But in Switzerland, they make the bodybuilders go very last.
Yeah,
And
interesting.
not only have I traveled across the world to compete with them and jet lag and all of this sort of stuff, um, it's we had to be very sort of calculated with eating our food throughout the day. But it was interesting in the fact that, we didn't get on stage till 9 o'clock at night or something like that. And I'd been up since 6 a.m. in the morning. It's just like every 3 hours we ate and we kept drinking our food and adding our sodium and all of that stuff. And every sort of check-in throughout the day, I just kept looking tighter and fuller. And it was just like this incredible process to watch you throughout the day. So I think that did definitely help with the stress for some things, right? Because normally you're like, oh, the more I eat, the more bloated I look, or like, in your head you look and how you
Yeah.
feel and such. But having a coach behind you who can really assess what's truly going on. But that was very helpful for me, just again being able to be on stage so late, which was atypical for a bodybuilder, at least in North American shows anyway.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I wonder because that's pretty much yeah. All North American shows are always typically bodybuilding first. So that yeah, that makes sense.
We like to prioritize
Yeah.
the bodybuilders. I get why they did it. It was kind of an audience thing, and it was they heavily focus on the bodybuilders, so they like that to be their like main event, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, But of course, we've done that with our pros at our Calgary show in the past. I think 2022 that happened, but the pros were on so late. And again, our goal is to always we want to, they've earned their status to be at that level, so we want to prioritize them in an event, which is why we effectively and then change the topics here, but we effectively created a whole second day event was for the pros, just to make sure that they are being taken care of and they're not stressed and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Because
that's a
like
really good strategy too, having an amateur day and I know it's kind of a segue going into like talking a little bit about our WNBF Canada shows. Um but I think 2022 was that the last show that it was like a 1 day show, or was that a 2 day show?
That was the 1 day show that
That was
we
the 1 day. That was the last 1 day show for Calgary. Yeah. I remember I
yeah,
was
and that
there,
was
and yeah, I think it was a really good strategy in moving into a 2 day show where, the pros are taken care of. They had the Saturday to get ready for their big day on Sunday, and it's just the amount of people that amateurs that showed up for the Calgary show. Everybody's just trying to get their pro card on that specific amateur day and then move into Sunday and into their first pro show. And I think going back to scheduling, I think also everybody's trying to schedule it that way, trying to get their pro card on that day and then do their first pro show. I think that's a really, really a very smart way to schedule it. And I think it worked out very well. Last year it worked really, really well. Everybody had a really good time as well. So I think this is a really good segue to talk a little bit about one of your hats on,
sure.
the future of WMEF Canada. Yes?
yeah, totally. Yeah, I think we covered my prep side of things well enough. I didn't mention my placings, I guess, but I did place top five at all three shows. I placed second in Washington and then fifth in the next two shows. But again, that caliber of that competition at Worlds was just like we said, it was just so incredible. I think the top 10 were from 10 different countries in the bantamweight class, which just goes to show how worldwide the WNBF is, coming from all over. And again, these are the best bantamweights in the world that all showed up in the same season. So again, I was very, very happy with placings. And again, like you said, you never know who's going to show up, and sometimes fifth placing can be better than actually winning, depending on who you're actually up against, right? So yeah,
Yeah, so no, that's awesome, man. Congrats on the shows. Like you looked unreal,
Yeah,
man,
absolutely
on
unreal.
stage.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like I would say that was from like even just looking at your photos, like even looked like you packed on some more size, have more fullness and everything. So like, yeah, it's crazy how competitive it is. But like even placing, yeah, top five at Worlds, like that's just insane with the group of guys that was there. I remember watching it live, and I'm just like, whoa, this is a whole nother level. So yeah, that's crazy, man.
super fun, just exciting for the federation and what's to come for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so to bring it back to the WNBF Canada, what like I think we were chatting a little bit before this about the new class. Maybe this would be a great opportunity to chat a bit about
Yeah,
the new classic physique class that's
yeah,
coming too.
totally. So this was just released, so it is new. So again, this is all the information that I have and reasonings and stuff like that. So for the longest time, the WNBF have been kind of like classic natural bodybuilding is classic physique or classic bodybuilding, right? Because there's only a limitation that naturally we can do, right? And again, this is why um, this, from 50 years ago, this was again more of your normal natural sort of physiques, right? So, how do you really differentiate sort of natural bodybuilding from classic? But at the same time, we understand that there is a huge piece of the market that are potentially being missed. And if a lot of potential young athletes who are looking up to these, untested classic physique athletes and going through the same federations that they are, they're potentially making some early mistakes, by using drugs that they may not have known otherwise. So we want to, again, it's again, our goals is always athlete experience. But we want to provide that platform for those to compete on naturally in a true and level playing drug tested level playing field. So that's kind of the why. A lot of affiliates, again, WNBF is in over 65 countries, right? So every region is different and has different exposure with types of athletes. So certain regions, classic physique, it doesn't really matter to them. But in a lot of regions as well, including North America, classic physique is one of the fastest, if not fastest growing physique class that there is. So obviously provide that platform for them. But we need to do it in a way that separates, that really does distinguish the classes from bodybuilding to classic physique, and then again to men's physique as well. So there are some things in the works, and I know there's still a lot of discussions around it. But hopefully in the next couple of weeks there'll be more of a judge's criteria and an athlete criteria in general. But I know that we will be offering it in all our shows this year, and the goal is to have a pro division in Calgary as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you know with like the posing criteria, any of those kind of things yet, or is it still kind of on the fence there?
Yeah, they're still being finalized, but it's going to not be dissimilar to what's out there already. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. The wheel's been invented, so to speak. But there probably will be. You're going to have your obviously your quarter turn poses, which won't be any different. But I believe there's going to be 5 mandatory classic physique poses with 2 optional ones, which will be of choice. Um, and we're just kind of distinguishing which ones are going to be included, right? So, yeah. And I'm going to say a lot of the earlier shows will be a lot of this sort of, making sure that things are working out, making sure the judges are trained properly, lots of judging workshops and those sort of things, so that everyone's on the same page before the shows start happening. But yeah, I think it is ultimately a good decision. It, as much as I do agree that classic and natural bodybuilding is classic, I think it's if we're going to do it right and well, it is going to be a different look.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
that actually, creates a question that I wanted to ask for, as you said, lightweight or bantamweight bodybuilding versus, classic physique. Of course, there's the differentiation between the trunks, and
Yep.
the second thing is, how would we, divide them, by weight classes and height. How would we, approach this?
Yeah, I think me personally, and again, this is one of the things that still needs to be ironed out, but I like this height to weight ratio because it really does then like uninclude some of those at least top level bodybuilders, right? Because they will be too heavy for their height, right? Especially like I mean, Ababakar is always going to be a bodybuilder. He's not a classic physique, but in essence, you put him on you take his height and you take his weight, and it's like okay, you're out of the upper limits of this range, so you cannot compete. So I think that's going to be the best way for us to do it, but we have had quite a few affiliates that have had their own versions of classic physique, but they weren't obviously included with a pro card and those sort of things. It was kind of like an optional. We even included one in our Ontario show. So we have data that we can sort of start to work off and sort of build these parameters for what the division actually entails. But I think having this height to weight ratio is probably going to be the best way to do it. Yeah, just to remove the absolute bodybuilding physiques who will typically be heavier on a shorter height.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then you said the trunks will be different, the poses will be different. They are going to make it more presentation based as well. So for those of you who don't know, bodybuilding is for the most part 100% physique based with you can break ties for the most part with regards to posing and some things like that. But like classic physique will be a little bit more on the presentation and posing side as well. So still physique based, but having a little bit more of that influence where they can shuttle up and down quite a few places depending.
Sweet. When it comes to conditioning with bodybuilding versus classic, is it going to be slightly less conditioned too, or are you guys still trying to figure that one out as well?
Yeah, it is going to be slightly less conditioned, but you still want to see all the
Yeah.
major separations between all the muscle groups. So you still want to see quad separation. You still want to see a light glute striation likely, which is why we're doing the trunks the way they are. They're not going to be kind of those, you know, speedos which come all the way down sort of idea, right? But yeah, it's yeah, and in essence, it's same with bikini and men's physique, right? Like it's not like they're any less conditioned than the other classes, but it's just that the top athletes, their build and their musculature is a way that doesn't make them look as striated, as hard or whatever as sort of those other classes. So I actually think it's more of a genetic thing than anything else. But again, it's still going to be heavily conditioned. Just maybe, like you said, it's just going to be not quite that extra 1% that bodybuilders are going that need to go for or should go for, whatever. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. With WNBF Canada too, is there anything else in the works that you guys are thinking of doing in the future, or anything else that you're thinking of incorporating?
I think that's a big one. We have some things that maybe in 2026 that we're looking at doing, but again, we're just in discussing ideas and stuff like that. But we're always looking at moving the needle forward. And also as well, I think this isn't just within Canada, but the WNBF, there was 6 countries that just released the WNBF Galaxy Pro, I think it was what it's called, where 6 affiliates actually have come together and are doing this like super pro qualifier, basically world level event. And I like that idea of potentially coming together with different groups and affiliates and creating these sort of like more bigger regional events, which increases the prize money. It attracts more athletes, it attracts more athletes to the federation, and it ultimately just improves the level that we can all compete at, right? So I think that's kind of what the future entails is again more of these collaboration sort of events. For the most part, we're trying to heavily invest in our just like just the exposure and just the athlete experience and getting the word out there, obviously for WNBF Canada still, but we're trying to be consistent with all our events, which I think we've done a really good job at. Is whether it's a Vancouver event or a Saskatchewan event or Ontario event, we're trying to make things consistent on that side of things as well, right? So when an athlete shows up, they know exactly what to expect. Yeah, and again, talk about stress management before. That's the best way to do it, right? So.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. When it comes to like the prize money for that show, I think they're giving out like $100,000 or something in prizes. Is that a lot from like investors investing into it, or how does that work to get that amount that high? Like I find that,
I
that pretty
I
cool.
I assume there is some people with some investments. You're talking about countries as well that do heavily invest in things as well. I think it's a little unfortunate here in North America, but I think they do have probably some big companies on board and things like that. And obviously having 5 or 6 countries that can do it, they can all pull their funds together. But yeah, with prize money that high, it's going to come from probably outside sources. You're not getting that from registrations, no way. So.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of new plans for new WNBF Canada was just a side question that just came into my mind while you were talking about it. Something that may happen in 2026. Um, I think you also mentioned that that getting the word out for WNBF Canada. I think it's been a very successful year in 2024, 2025. Yeah, 2024. I think we've done. I've seen a lot more international athletes, reaching out, wanting to come to Canada to compete in some of our shows. I think which is fantastic. So the word is actually, I think it's working. It's getting out. Um, Experience. I've spoke to some of athletes, and being a past athlete myself, I think that the WNBF provides a wonderful schedule. Everything is very fairly on time. I would say you guys are not very too far off from what it has been posted. So I think that's really really good. Um, the side question was, would there be, potentially even more shows in Canada for throughout the year?
Yeah, I think one of our goals is we would like to go further to the east as well. So we do have athletes out on the east coast that do travel to our events to compete. And so we would like to obviously create an amateur event over there. So kind of Nova Scotia or Newfoundland or something along those lines. That way we are truly like east coast to west coast. Another idea that we're kind of playing around with is potentially having two Calgary shows. And because again, it is by far our biggest show. We've already had to make it into 2 day events. But that's one thing that we would like to potentially do as well. And ideally, I'd love to have this tiered system. So in the UK, I think they do it really well. Whether you've got these novice first timers events, you have to qualify for your sort of kind of super pro event. I would like to have this sort of tiered system where we've got sort of Calgary is one of them, and potentially like another, Ontario show where you've got these sort of all events you have to qualify for that event, which will probably be pro shows as well. So you got this like elite show with the pros, and those are the ones that then qualify for our world's team. So ideally, we always do well with having a great number of athletes come to the worlds with us. So last year we had around 30 or so, both on the amateur and the pro side. But is we want to up our competitiveness as well. So again, having this sort of a little bit more tiered approach, which will ultimately make the best athletes qualify for the world championships on the amateur and potentially the pro side too. So I think that's our sort of grand vision in the next couple of years. Is obviously you need to increase the foundational events, right? You need to have them enough of them throughout the year, but then also have that tier where they can kind of work up to, right? So yeah. And we've got, and to do that, it's, you need a successful team around you. And I'm not going to be the first one to say that we've done it ourselves because we have an amazing, incredible team of promoters and athletes and volunteers and stuff throughout the whole country that all believe in kind of the goal of the WNBF, right? And providing that platform for an actual athletes to compete on and the athlete experience that goes along with it. But, it's that's, all the success has been down to the help that we've had for sure.
Makes sense. I'm trying to think what else. Let's see. No, but that's awesome with the shows. I think that's a really good idea just to make Canada even more competitive, like having it ramp up there. And it seems like, yeah, the WNBF is getting so competitive in other countries as well. So it's just nice to be able to get up there as well. But yeah, no, I'm definitely excited. I might even end up doing the classic physique this year too. So we'll see with that. I was thinking of just doing men's physique.
Brandon will be our poster boy. That's
There we go. But do you think you'll do classic? Are you gonna continue sticking with bodybuilding, or do you think you'll try out classic as well? Or
Yeah, I think my structure is bodybuilding. I think that look is different. Throw out some examples there, like having like a Dirk. He's,
yeah,
not dissimilar in a way where we just have like this little bit more thicker, but like just grainier, harder sort of look. And I think that's going to be the look of the bodybuilder. That or your Zebin who ended up winning the bantamweight class, who's just got so much muscle bellies on him that that's not the sort of the classic look. And I also think having this weight to height sort of ratio will impede that sort of look for the classic. But obviously, I think yeah, having that nice small waist, having those nice like still nice flaring lats, having legs on them, but again, not overly hard and grainy and that sort of thing. I think structurally, I'm not going to be a classic guy. Yeah, so I'm going to stick to my roots here.
makes sense. Makes sense. Well,
Yeah.
that reminds me with the posing routine. So for classic, I know posing is a little bit more important. With the actual posing routine itself, is that going to be? Are you going to be getting points for that as well?
Yeah, from my understanding, yes, there will be obviously an individual routine to own music, similar to how we do bodybuilding as well. But again, there's the presentation is going to include the routine itself. So you're going to have
Yeah.
your how well do they pose on stage as a group, but
Yeah.
also the individual posing routine, just to build up that final score there.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Sweet.
Going to be a
I think
big,
those
big
are
thing.
oh yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
No, 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 no. So it's just going to be a really big, big thing. It's because we've been, getting. I think it's been 3 years already. We've been actually having athletes asking if the WNBF has classic. So I think it's a really good thing that we announced it, and we I can just foresee there's a lot of noise already. As soon as the posts come out, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of past athletes who show like a very big interest in it already.
For sure. And I
Actually,
think
one.
it just elevates the game of the WNBF as well. Like I said, it fills a gap
Yeah.
because there are certain physiques that they will do well in natural bodybuilding, but they just won't do that well. But again, this will just be a little bit more tailored towards again a different look, and it's making sure that look is differentiated. One of the big, actually, this is just a fact more than anything, is we've seen a lot of federations do it in the past, and their bodybuilding classes have been destroyed, right? Because everyone's gone over to classic physique, and in my opinion, it's because they didn't distinguish the look enough. Effectively, you're just taking the same guys, but they just moved over into shorts and posed a little differently, right? And they're still big and hard and grainy and all of that stuff. So I think it's like it needs to be, that's what I said, it needs to be done right. We need to keep the natural, we need to keep the competitiveness on the natural bodybuilding side just as competitive, which, again, this year as well, so we had 60 pro men's physique bodybuilders on stage, right? So I think there is enough uh, competitive athletes that it won't hurt that side of the sport. But again, it still opens up a different avenue for athletes to choose to compete, right? So yeah.
Makes sense. Are they doing that in the States as well? Are they opening up Classic there too and at Worlds, or is that just a Canadian thing right now?
No, it's worldwide.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
awesome.
no, this was actually announced by WNBF official first.
Okay,
There was talk beforehand and everything else, but yeah, officially they announced it, and then we just followed suit because again, consistency is number one with any brand, so we want to be as consistent as we can with them, so that the athletes know exactly what to expect wherever they choose to compete. So yeah, we'll offer it. Same with they'll be offering it, and from my understanding, it's going to be offered at Worlds and everything as well. So yeah.
perfect. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Sweet. I think that's all the questions I had. Do you have any other questions you wanted to ask, Adrian?
No, you filled in pretty much all the questions that I had like right here. So yeah, it's pretty much the same questions we talked about. The most ones that I actually wanted to really get into was the his prep, all the questions you already asked on things he did, has his approach. I actually asked, yeah, I already filled one about, how he would it feel different? Well, the other side question is kind of just that I had like his prep thing, going back was because we understand, the body actually adapts differently as we age. And just how would that your body composition look different, maybe his like weight differences between his prep versus now, and then like
Mhm.
versus his last year's body weight, like does he look any different? That was the only side question I actually had here, but I think I think the way I think Leo just talked about it, like it's pretty much, yeah,
Sweet.
fairly easy for him.
Well,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
man.
I was going to say quickly on that. My weight was the same back in 2021. That was the first time that I'd actually seen an increase in all my shows. So typically I was around 139 to 140 pounds for my first like 4 seasons. And then I think it was just, again, better preps, slightly slower preps, slightly better preps, keeping food a little higher, a little less cardio, etc. But like I said, I was 147 pounds the last two shows effectively, right? So yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
That's awesome. Is there any questions that you have for us?
No, I mean, I think in general, keep spreading the word of natural bodybuilding in general, and competing and coaching and all that good stuff, and the information that, evidence-based lifting that we do, obviously. Our season on the WNBF starts in May 3rd in Vancouver, followed up by Kelowna on May 17th, and then we have Winnipeg, I believe it's June 6th, and then 2 weeks later is Edmonton. And Edmonton, we're actually going to offer Pro Masters Bikini for the first time. And then into our fall shows, we've got Ontario, which is in Toronto this year, when we're super excited for, followed by Saskatchewan, and then our 2 day Calgary event. So Worlds this year is in Los Angeles. It's always a fun time, great event. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to the season and again seeing you guys in person this next season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good. I'll be on stage. Are you going to be judging some of the shows this year, or going to be helping backstage kind of thing, or?
I'm usually around helping out more than anything. I don't typically judge our Canadian shows, for the most part, unless I'm needed to. And one, it depends on if I do have any clients, because if I have clients, I don't judge at all, right? I just remove myself there. But I will be judging a few shows in the States this year.
Sweet.
That's usually my sort of travel plans is go and help out and help some friends run their shows and help and go judge their events and yeah.
Nice, man. Nice.
Do you know what's happening for the federal ratio? Like it's June 14th, or am I tripping?
I believe it's right in between. No, I think you're right. There's yeah, still the same venue and everything else that they have going on. I've seen Katie Wayman Wright is the promoter down there. She's been posting fairly frequently about it. So yeah.
Okay.
Sweet.
Okay. That's awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, Leo. We're just gonna keep you around after recording, just a little longer. But yes, tell the audience where we can find you, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I got lots of handles. I guess my main personal page is leo.kingsfitness on Instagram. My gym page is kings.fitness on Instagram, and then WNBF Canada and all the affiliates shows have their own city name. That's probably the best places to reach out. You can, yeah, direct message me on any of those platforms if anyone has any questions about competing as an athlete or client or whatever. Then yeah, I'm an open book. I'm happy to let anyone know whatever they want. So
Yes, and I can vouch for that as well. So you guys, the first WNBF show is going to be the spring show at May 3rd, in Vancouver. So sign up now. And
exactly.
yeah, and we'll hope to see you all there. So thanks today for our episode, and thanks again to you, Leo. We will see you next time.